John Colter's dramatic encounter with the Blackfoot people, resulting in the legendary tale of Colter's Run, is one of the most enduring survival stories from the early American frontier. However, the broader implications of this encounter extend beyond the sheer physical endurance Colter displayed. It speaks to the cultural and geopolitical struggles between Native American tribes and the European settlers and fur traders who were encroaching on their land. Colter's life, his interaction with the Blackfoot, and his incredible escape embody the dangers and complexities of frontier life, as well as the changing dynamics between indigenous populations and expanding settler populations. This expanded exploration will delve deeper into Colter's personal history, the cultural context of his time, the fur trade, the Blackfoot people, and the broader implications of his survival. A frontiersman in a changing America, John Colter's story begins in the late 18th century in a United States still in its infancy. Born in 1774 in Virginia, Colter was part of a generation that came of age during the American Revolution and the subsequent formation of a new nation. Though details of his early life are scant, it's clear that Colter's formative years were shaped by the rugged, pioneering spirit of the American frontier. At the age of 30, he joined the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1803, setting the stage for his future as one of the most well-known mountain men in American history. The Lewis and Clark expedition, led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, was an ambitious journey commissioned by President Thomas Jefferson to explore the newly acquired Louisiana Territory. The expedition had two primary goals: to map the territory and establish relations with the indigenous peoples who inhabited it, while Lewis and Clark often received most of the historical attention. Colter's role as a scout was critical to the success of the mission. Colter's intimate knowledge of the wilderness, keen survival instincts, and ability to communicate with Native American tribes made him an indispensable member of the team. Though Colter's tenure with the expedition was short, he left in 1806 after the group reached the Pacific Ocean. His experience in the wilds of the American West gave him the tools he would need to survive in one of the most dangerous regions of North America. After his departure, Colter chose to remain in the West as a trapper and guide, joining a growing fur trade industry that would ultimately bring him into direct conflict with the indigenous tribes who called the region home. The early 1800s were a time of significant expansion for the United States, and the fur trade became an economic powerhouse in the region. As settlers, explorers, and trappers pushed westward, they encountered Native American tribes who had lived on the land for centuries. While some tribes welcomed trade and formed alliances with the newcomers, others viewed the encroachment of European settlers and fur traders as a direct threat to their way of life. The mounting tensions between indigenous populations and the newcomers eventually led to violent confrontations, with both sides vying for control over the land and resources. The Blackfoot Nation, guardians of the Northern Rockies. To understand the full scope of Colter's encounter with the Blackfoot, it is essential to grasp the importance of the Blackfoot Nation in the historical context of the time. The Blackfoot Confederacy, which included the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani tribes, was one of the most powerful groups in the northern Great Plains and the Rocky Mountains. Located primarily in what is now southern Alberta, Canada, and northern Montana, the Blackfoot were known for their fierce independence, sophisticated culture, and military prowess. The Blackfoot had a deep connection to the land and a long history of maintaining autonomy over their territories. As a nomadic people, they followed the bison herds, which were essential to their diet and lifestyle. They were highly skilled horsemen and hunters, and their prowess in warfare was renowned throughout the region. By the early 19th century, the Blackfoot had established themselves as formidable warriors and protectors of their land, and they were well aware of the growing influence of European settlers and fur traders in the region. The Blackfoot's relationship with the fur trade was complex. On one hand, they relied on trade for items like guns, tools, and European goods, which helped them in hunting and warfare. On the other hand, the fur trade brought devastating consequences for their way of life, such as overhunting, the spread of disease, and the depletion of the bison population. The introduction of firearms, for example, radically changed the balance of power among native tribes and between indigenous people and European settlers. Though some tribes used these weapons to their advantage, the Blackfoot often found themselves in conflict over access to these essential resources. By the time of Colter's encounter in 1808, the Blackfoot had become one of the most determined tribes, resisting the fur trade's encroachment. Their distrust of outsiders, including trappers like Colter, was rooted in this complex, often violent interaction with the growing presence of Europeans and Americans in their territory. Their role as formidable warriors furthered their reputation as staunch protectors of their land. The fur trade and its role in Native American relations. The fur trade was one of the defining features of early American history, particularly in the Western Territories. At its peak in the early 19th century, it drove much of the economic activity in the American frontier, and traders from companies like the American Fur Company, the Hudson's Bay Company, and the Rocky Mountain Fur Company flooded the area. For many Native American tribes, including the Blackfoot, the fur trade was both a source of livelihood and a source of conflict. John Colter, as a fur trapper, was a part of this broader movement. Trappers like Colter would venture into the wilderness to capture beavers, which were prized for their pelts. Beaver pelts were used in the production of hats, clothing, and other goods, making them highly valuable in European and American markets. While the fur trade brought new goods to Native American communities, it also created competition between different tribes, increased intertribal violence, and led to a depletion of valuable resources. The fur trade also disrupted the ecosystems of the land, with the beaver population being over-harvested in many regions. For the Blackfoot, the fur trade was an invasion. Their people's cultural and ecological balance had been dependent on bison herds and their ancient practices of trading and bartering with neighboring tribes. The arrival of European settlers and trappers disrupted this balance. Colter's role in this system, as a fur trapper who likely entered Blackfoot territory in search of beavers, would have been viewed with suspicion or outright hostility by the Blackfoot. The growing presence of trappers competing for resources with native peoples intensified the Blackfoot's resistance to outsiders and added to the already volatile situation on the frontier. The capture and escape. The true story of Colter's run. In 1808, Colter's encounter with the Blackfoot escalated into one of the most dramatic survival stories in American frontier history. While the precise details of Colter's capture and escape remain shrouded in myth and legend, the key events are generally agreed upon. Colter was taken by the Blackfoot warriors, stripped of his clothing and possessions, and left for dead. What followed next, however, has become the stuff of legend. Colter's escape, often referred to as Colter's Run, is one of the most famous survival stories of the American West. The Blackfoot, perhaps realizing that Colter could not survive without weapons or food, likely planned to execute him. However, Colter managed to outwit his captors. In some versions of the story, he ran at full speed for miles, crossing rivers and rugged terrain. It is said that he was naked, without food or shelter, and on foot. In reality, Colter would have had to rely on his profound understanding of the terrain, his ability to swim across rivers, and his knowledge of Native American tracking techniques. Colter's escape was not just a testament to his physical endurance, but also to his psychological resilience. As a skilled frontiersman, Colter would have had an intricate understanding of the wilderness, which played a key role in his survival. His ability to read the land, his knowledge of the animals in the region, and his ability to hide his tracks from his pursuers were crucial in helping him evade the Blackfoot. Though some aspects of the story may be embellished over time, the essence of Colter's escape speaks to the broader spirit of survival that was characteristic of the mountain men, who often found themselves in life or death situations while navigating the vast, unforgiving wilderness. The significance of Colter's Run, a legacy of survival and conflict. Colter's legendary escape had far-reaching implications both for his own life and for the broader history of the American frontier. His story became emblematic of the early mountain men's ability to endure and survive in an environment that was both physically and culturally hostile. While the escape was certainly an extraordinary feat of human endurance, It also underscored the brutal reality of frontier life and the ongoing conflict between indigenous populations and European settlers. Colter's survival is a reminder of the harsh conditions that settlers and trappers faced as they pushed westward. It was a time of intense cultural and territorial clashes, where every journey into the wilderness was fraught with risk, and every encounter with Native American tribes carried the potential for violence or misunderstanding. Colter's legacy is not just one of personal triumph, but of a broader era of conflict and change that reshaped the American West. In conclusion, the story of John Colter's escape from the Blackfoot is far more than just a tale of individual survival. It encapsulates the larger forces at play during the early American frontier era: the expansion of the United States, the fur trade, and the complex, often violent relationships between Native American tribes and European settlers. While Colter's run remains a powerful story of human endurance, it is also a testament to the resilience of the Blackfoot people, who fought to protect their land and way of life against the relentless forces of colonization. This event serves as a microcosm of the frontier's conflicts, where survival often depended not just on physical strength and cunning, but also on one's ability to navigate the intricate cultural dynamics of the land.